pleasure to meet you. I want to start by dropping pieces of paper. I want to start, yes.
Before we start, I just wanted to apologise for being on this. A year ago, I had a bad infection on my leg, and I went into hospital. They said, are you superstitious? And I said, no. They said, well, we're going to do your operation on Friday, May the 13th. And so anyway, I went into hospital, and they replaced my hip, my femur, and my knee all in one go. Wow. So I'm now bionic from there to there. Anyways, they told me it'd be about a year before I was walking properly, and I'm just having a few problems with my knee at the moment. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, it's lovely to be here. It's and fantastic to see such a lovely audience. Thank you very much.
And this is your first time in Calgary, correct?
First time in Calgary. I've been to Toronto and I've been to Montreal. I've not been to. This is my first time in Calgary, and I'm coming back to go to the Stampede. I want to go to the Stampede. I'm a real big horse fan. I love horses, especially race horses.
Do you ride them?
No, I have them. Yeah. Well, I learned to ride for a film years ago, and I think it was Jabberwocky or something like this that we were doing, and they rang me up and they said, we've got this part for you, and there's you do ride, don't you? And I said, of course I do. Yeah, ride regularly. Like I've never ridden a horse in my life. So a couple of weeks later, they rang me up again and they said, we want to talk to you about your jousting scenes. Jousting? I've never been on a horse in my life, and so I thought I'd better go and have some lessons. So I went out and I had regular lessons for about 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks. And when we came to do the jousting scenes, they said, "Oh, no, it's much too dangerous for you to do. We're going to get you a stuntman in to do it." I thought, "Oh, thank God for that."
Of course, you are much beloved for your role physically embodying Darth Vader, having one of the most amazing entrance scenes in any film ever. I want to know about your audition process. Like, what was it like meeting George Lucas and auditioning for that role?
Well, it wasn't much of an audition, actually. I mean, what happened was, in 1970, these dates right. I think it was 70. In 1970, I did a very famous film. And that was Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. Anybody? The film came out very, very briefly in 1971. And of course, those of you that have seen Clockwork Orange realise that it was very high sexual content, and very high violence content. And unfortunately, Stanley Kubrick started getting death threats. Everybody would try and kill him because they didn't like the movie very much. And I, as I said, I had this lovely little part, and I was playing Julian, who was the bodyguard to the writer. And I had 2 lovely scenes in it. One where I carried Alex down the stairs when he came to the house. I carried him down sort of 3 flights of stairs, and then put him at the table at the bottom. And I did a second scene where I carried the writer down the stairs in his wheelchair, and did exactly the same thing. And it was two really sort of memorable scenes from the movie. And unfortunately for me, in the very brief period that it was out, because Stanley took it off the circuit, he said nobody's going to see this film again. In the very brief period that it was out, George Lucas saw it and remembered me for 5 years. And in 1976, came to London, and he set up in the offices of 20th Century Fox, right in the heart of central London. And said to the managing director of 20th Century Fox, he said, "Is there any chance of you finding this guy Dave Prowse for me?" You see, and luckily I knew the managing director of 20th Century Fox, a guy called Peter Beale. He said, "Oh, he said, I know him quite well." He said, "I'll bring him in for you." And so I went in to see George, and sort of met up with him. And he took me into a room and showed me all these conceptual drawings of Star Wars, which are all around the room. And as you said, this is such and such a thing, and this is such and such a thing, and this is Chewbacca, and then all this sort of explaining everything to me. And then we went down and sat and we had a little chat. And he said, "Well," he said, "I'd like to offer you one of 2 parts in the movie." I thought, "Well, this is great. I'm being offered one of 2 parts in the movie, like, you know." And I said, "What are the 2 parts?" He said, "Well, the first one's a character called Chewbacca." I said, "What in the hell is Chewbacca?" And he said it was like a hairy gorilla that goes through the film on the side of the goodies. And all I could think of at the time, I thought, oh God, it's 3 months in a gorilla skin. It's going to be hot, sweaty, smelly. I thought, no, I don't fancy it. So I said, no, I don't fancy that very much, George. He said, well, what's the other one? What's the other part? And he said, well, he said, it's the big villain of the film, a character called Darth Vader, you see. I said, don't say any more, George, I'll have the villain's part, thank you very much. And he said, tell me for why. And I said, well, if you think back on all the movies that you've ever seen, where there are goodies and baddies, I said, you always remember the bad guy. And he said, Dave, he said, I think you've made a very wise decision. He said, because nobody will ever forget Darth Vader. And here we are, 35 years later, traveling all around the world, signing autographs.